Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our session on getting your act together. My name is Sonia Stevens, and I am going to be joined by Melissa Smith. Melissa, if you want to raise your hand.
Hey, everybody.
And we're going to be talking about ACT and how we can, or giving you some suggestions on how we can, you can prepare your students to take the test. So if you don't mind, you can use the chat to enter your name, your school, and what your role is. And so I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Hi, Brian. I did not know you were on the call.
I'm stealthy like that, Sonia. Happy to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you. Hey, Sophia, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. So today's objectives, or what we want to try to accomplish, as I said, is the first one, we want to share some current resources with you guys and ideas that you can use and take back to your school to use to help students prepare for the ACT. And then the second thing that we want to try to get today is an understanding of things that you are currently doing in your building to help prepare students to take the ACT or the pre-ACT, any challenges that you may be having or experiencing, and if there's any needs that we can support you with from the district office. So the question is, why should we focus on the ACT? And if you look at the screen, what we did was provide you with 5 years of data based on our subgroups. And if you notice, for almost all of the subgroups, or the our two largest subgroups, which would be our Black or African American students and our Hispanic or Latino students, you can see that their scores are, their composite scores are much lower than their non-white counterparts, or their subgroups, the subgroups like Asian students, or even the multiracial groups. And you see that line that is that has 17. That was what the admissions benchmark was prior to COVID. So students had to score around the 17 in order to be considered for admissions to any of our UNC system schools. Well, ironically, I think it was back in March, the UNC system revised that policy. And in addition to looking at the ACT scores, they decided that they would look at other factors. And so as a result of that, other factors such as community service, leadership, GPA, types of courses that students are taking. And so as a result of looking at those other factors, they actually increased the composite for the UNC system. And so that has moved up to 19. And we thought that was very interesting. And to me, that speaks to the reason why we need to have students better prepared to take the test, because we know in some of the schools, some of our UNC schools, even though they say that they're test optional, if you read through some of the application processes, it says that students must take the ACT or submit an ACT score for some of those state schools. And so the other thing I wanted to share with you is when looking at the colleges that are in either the UNC system or just some of our private schools that are in North Carolina, the top schools that our students attend, and this is from the 2019 data. And so you can see the ACT composite ranges. So for App State, a student needs to score somewhere around 23 to 28 in order to be admitted to App State. Now remember, when we're trying to help our students of color improve their scores, their lines were below that 17 line. And so East Carolina is 19 to 24. And then if you look at schools like North Carolina Central, 17 to 20 is that composite range. A&T is 17 to 22. And then even looking at some of our larger state schools like Carolina, that composite range is 27 to 33. So our point is that we need to make sure that we are providing students with the appropriate resources so that they can be successful for this portion of their application. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to talk a little bit more about the district goal.
So as you can see here, our district goal by 2020, which is this year, our goal is to graduate at least 95% of our students who are ready for productive citizenship, as well as higher education or career. And so looking at our ACT scores and trying to get kids ready for higher education, one of the goals of the high school programs is to make sure in order to reach that goal, we need to ensure that every high school student has access to rigorous ACT test prep. And so if we think of the goal or the end in mind and starting that way, the test date for juniors and sophomores, the ACT test date has been set, it's February 23rd, 2021. And for the pre-ACT, it's a pretty flexible window. All it says is that schools will need to administer the test once students are back in session. And so again, schools will have flexibility in their choice of when to administer that, as long as it's done before May. And so one of the things we want to sort of share with schools is, if that is the end goal, we're looking at next spring or in February, what do we need to do in terms of working backwards and getting our students prepared? So some of the things that we have thought about that schools can do is, of course, hold regular test prep sessions. And so one of the things that we saw is, how do we use our asynchronous days? So an idea might be to use your asynchronous days to hold test prep sessions. Recently, we saw on Twitter that that's something that South Garner High School is doing. And so if that's something that you're doing, really great, but that might be one way of, or a date and time that you can use for test prep. Another thing schools can do in terms of holding regular test prep sessions is covering topics such as managing time, eliminating answers, taking notes, or what to do when you're guessing. We also have created the district ACT presentation template, and in that slide deck that you were given, the handout, you'll see a link to that, even though it's linked here. And so if you want, you can use that slide deck, and it sort of goes through same sort of things about managing time, eliminating answers, and it's something that it's already prepared, and you can use it to tweak to use for your test prep. In your handout is also preparing the ACT test booklet, and we have updated that link to the 2021 link. And a lot of what you will see in the ACT presentation template was taken from that booklet. So incorporating some practice items in core classes, maybe an ACT question of the day at the beginning of the day or in a particular class, can be something that schools can do. We also encourage students and teachers to sign up for the ACT Academy. So there's also a link in your handout for that as well. And again, if you haven't seen the ACT Academy, it's one way that students can put their scores in, especially if they've done the pre-ACT, and based on that score, it'll tell you provide resources for students. What do they need to do to beef up their score? As a teacher, if you have your whole class in there, you can then assign different resources to your kids. So it's a really good resource for both students and teachers to work together in terms of preparation. We also encourage schools to share that slide that we just shared, and we have the entire thing. We just picked some of the top 10 schools that our high schoolers go to, but that has a whole list of ACT composite averages. And so it's good for students to kind of know ahead of time, what is the end goal? Where are they heading in terms of their composite averages? And they should be aware of what do they need to work towards. And then finally, another suggestion that we've heard of is scheduling a prep and mock session day using either your school staff or an external vendor like the Princeton Review. And so we've given you here a link of how you can get to the Princeton Review and to see some of the free ACT practice tests and events. ACT of itself, the website, if you've never been to it, has a wealth of information. And so we encourage you to explore. And one of the things we have done is we've put together this handout, which is also in the handout that you have. And so we have sort of showed you, here are some resources on the ACT website for administrators, for counselors, for students, for parents, for teachers. We've sort of broken them down by different stakeholders so you can see which resources are available. In light of the pandemic, ACT has also provided on their website several areas that might be of interest. And so they have live events and webinars that you can attend, and we've provided you with that link. There's also the ACT News and blog that you can look at different articles that they have in terms of what's new, what are some other schools and districts doing? And then the thing that I like the most is this last one here in terms of, given where you are in high school, whether you're a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, or a senior, what resources, based on where you click on, it'll show you what you need to be doing at that time as you prepare towards the ACT. So now we'd like to hear from you. And so one of my colleagues will put in the chat the link to a Padlet, and in the Padlet we'll be talking about three things. We want to hear from you, what are your current practices? We want to hear what are some of the challenges that you are facing in terms of helping students prepare for the ACT, and then last but not least, what are some of your current needs? Spencer, were you able to put that in the chat already?
Yep, you should find that in the chat.
All right. Sophia, since you're the only one with us, do you mind just sharing? You don't have to type it out.
So we typically, we're just getting back our NC State classes that our juniors are going to be in. So we typically, what I'm getting ready to do this week is look at when their college classes are, and usually there's an overlap. Can everybody hear me? I'm sorry, I just started talking.
Yes, we can.
And so we arrange our master schedule with our class time to adjust for our college classes and create ACT prep sessions by subject level. And so their biology teachers, our students take biology in 11th grade. So their biology teacher incorporate science, ACT study skills, and test taking strategies, as well as content area, how to answer those specific questions within those periods. And it's set aside specifically. So this is the biology ACT session, and there's an English one, and then there's history one. They all talk about the writing piece. It's not just the English teacher that's talking about the writing piece. And so it's done that way. So it's done in small doses, and it sets them up to be ready for when it's time to take the ACT later on in February.
Sophia, has it been difficult to get teacher buy-in for ACT prep?
No, because they're utilizing their content area where they're comfortable. So where they're using their expertise to teach the skills. So because the ACT is broken down into the different subject levels, they are able to, they've bought into it. And actually I started the discussion. I told them I was coming here. Maybe I can come with new resource. They are nervous about this semester, about doing it virtually. Because we did it, depending on the rotation of the week of the first of the morning college classes, we did it either twice a week with biology or 3 times a week with English. It just rotated, but they all were participating and actively doing it. And we see the benefits of it with our kids.
Do you know if they're using ACT Academy at all, or where are they getting their prep?
I think they're just getting it from the website based off of what I've only been at STEM for a year, but from looking at what they've been doing. So one of the things that we talked about this week after Brian shared about this, I reached out to them. Brian had mentioned the ACT Academy. So I put that out and they were interested in finding out more about it. They've heard about it, but I don't think they've ever done it. And they were going to start to explore as well. And then we were going to get together next week during testing week and start to plan for that.
Yeah, you might reach out to Vanessa Barnes over at Millbrook because I believe that she did have 1 or 2 teachers who use the ACT Academy for their prep. One of the nice things about the Academy is that you can go in by subject areas and teachers can, if they wanted to select, let's say a skill level or a composite level of 35, which I know you guys have a lot of high performing students, then the system itself will suggest what questions for prep or practice that students can practice on. And then the other nice thing about it is if students have a pre-ACT score, so if they took the test, the pre-ACT as 10th graders, they can load those scores into the ACT Academy. And then based on how they scored, the system will recommend what kinds of questions or the level of questions that students should be able to take. And so that way you can individualize it, or teachers can individualize it for students. So for those 35 and 36s, I know you got a few of those over there, you can give them the more challenging classes. And then for those that are, at your 23s or even your 20s or whatever, that they can have questions that are more appropriate for their level and within each specific content area. So that's the other nice thing about it too, is that it can be tailored to whatever their needs are.
Yeah, I think as you were talking about it and describing it, I think that sounds really good, especially since we have the history and I already have the buy-in. So it's just a matter of finding a good resource that's going to benefit them and the students. Do you know if we do everything with Peer Deck so that our teachers are seeing what each kid is working on? So because they like it, it feels like they're walking around the room to see what's going on. And so do you know if it's able to attach, or I don't know how it would attach to?
Yes, so the way it works is the teachers will create an account, and then students can create an account, and then they can link to one another. So teachers can assign, just like what you're saying, they can assign the problems, and then they can see what the students worked on, if they finished it, they can assign, different assessments. And it's the nice thing about the ACT Academy is that it doesn't have to be used for ACT prep. You actually choose ACT prep, but you can choose whatever subject area you want. That has nothing to do with ACT at all, if that's what you're using.
Is that a school? Is ACT prep? Do we have to get a school account or?
Now that's a good question. I don't know if I think it's by individual teacher. Melissa, do you remember? Do you recall?
I think it was by individual teacher. I think when you go in and you create an account, that's just one of the courses that they have.
And it's free or?
Yes.
Free. Okay.
It's free. Now, there are some resources on ACT Academy that students can elect to pay for if they
Okay.
want to. But no, the questions, their whole item bank, all of that is free. So
Okay.
I figure why not use it? But the resources that do cost, if students qualify for free or reduced lunch, then they have access to those
Okay.
resources for free, in
Okay.
addition to the other resources. So if there's,
Okay.
if they want to, I think you can download like the big test prep book, which would traditionally have a fee associated with it. But if they qualify for free or reduced lunch, then they can get that prep book for free. But it's all online, so I don't know why they would want to have. But some people like a paper copy.
Yeah. I still like my paper, especially when I'm doing tests. I'm old school.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sounds so. This is definitely good, because then I can meet back with them, and they were excited to find out that that district was thinking about this, and because they were already thinking about, well, how are we going to do this, and so this will be good information for me to come back to, and come back with them and share.
Yeah, and when you share with them, I mean, if they have questions or if they'd like for us to come and walk them through like the site and all of that stuff, we can certainly support them with that. They're probably tired of having me come out to the school, but
no, they're open to whatever is going to make it teaching and learning, that's going to work for the students as well as for them as well.
Yeah.
So like I said, we're thinking about it, and then after our API meeting on Monday, I shot them an email, and then this flood of email came back, and I said, well, hold that thought, I'm gonna go to this. So we'll get back.
We certainly appreciate you signing on. And is there anything that you need or that you think schools might need? Because we were trying to understand what the needs of schools are and why some schools may not be engaging in ACT prep for students. Do you have any thoughts on that, or anything that your school may need in particular?
For us, no, because it's already embedded, and because it's structured in the master schedule, they kind of don't really have a choice. It's set up that way, and it rolls through. So for us, no, but it does help the students, because how they've done it individually when they first do it, start off with it to get them started, and then they have them do it in groups and work together and figure out and problem solve, well, why is this answer not right, and how did they come up, and look at the verbiage of the questions, and it just helps them overall with that critical thinking and just test taking strategies.
Sure.
So I would definitely, wherever I am, would want that to happen.
Okay.
So yeah. So as far for me, it's really about teaching the kids how to read the questions, right? And really look at the answers and go from there. So yeah.
They probably realize that with the science ones, like the science questions are not so much about science content,
right?
It's really about critical thinking.
Yep. And that's the unique thing in seeing them. April Johnson is our biology teacher. And so last year I was able to sit in her class when she was doing the ACT prep using biology, and to just have the kids think through and think about their answers and talk about, well, why wasn't it this and why wasn't it that? And then they got caught up in the science piece. And then she pulled them back and started to, well, what did it say? What is it really asking you for? Do you have that information? And then there's just the aha moment. So yeah. So thank you guys for doing this. And thank you, Brian, if you're still here, for putting it out there. I appreciate it.
Well, we certainly appreciate you letting us quiz you a bit and sharing what you guys are doing, because I think that's going to be very insightful for other schools to hear. And I think one of the things that you said, or I know what you said about incorporating this as a part of the master schedule is really the only way you're going to ensure that this work is happening. It just has, like, there's so many benefits to that, and because it's like an embedded ownership,
Right.
if you will, from the teacher standpoint. So
Yeah, and they get so caught up in just in the pacing and the volume of the curriculum that if you shift from quantity and teach with quality, you will get more.
yeah,
And so to get them to shift from that and not get caught up in this student is here and this student is here, what am I going to do? Being creative with supporting that. So the ACT Academy will definitely help us with that piece, because we do have the different levels, and the grouping piece is how we support and help to scaffold our kids in the beginning. And then usually like the end of the week, everybody does their practice individually, but the beginning of the week, they all work on it together. So it'll be really cool to see how that would look in ACT prep individually, having them at different levels and working at their levels. And then also doing that as a group too, because I think the group talk, especially now in virtual, is critical. So yeah.
Well, thank you again. And if you don't mind, if you think about it, follow up with us just to let us know how it's going, particularly if your teachers decide to use the ACT Academy, because we want to, before we start promoting it, super hard district wide, we'd like to have some users.
Yes. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
It's easy for me to like look at the system and think, oh, this should be easy to do, but it's a little different from a teacher's perspective and a school's perspective. So
yeah, definitely. And thank you. And if you're offering anything else, because really and truly, I mean, I think I read a blurb about this happening, but until Brian specifically, and maybe it's because I was already in ACT mode that I picked up on it better. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, that's good to know, because we can start pushing things out to your group, for other topics, so that way it's on their agenda. Okay.
Definitely. I think it's helpful.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
thank you, guys.
So thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Sophia.
Bye.